celebrating 10 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Pamela Reeves.
Pam Reeves is my guest this week on Anything is Possible, the Virginia girl. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you.
Where in Virginia?
Grayson County, Virginia.
Where in Virginia? Where's Grayson County?
Everybody asks that. It's a small county down in the corner near Virginia, North Carolina, and Tennessee, where they all come together. But it's probably in the middle of nowhere.
What drives the economy?
You know, it's really nothing at the moment. It used to be pretty agricultural. You know, a lot of people grew tobacco, had small farms, dairy farms, and things like that. But it's really very depressed these days.
Did you have a relationship with tobacco growing up?
I did.
What'd you do?
Have planted tobacco and suckered tobacco and cut tobacco and done the whole 9 yards.
Brothers and sisters?
Well, I had 4 younger sisters, so we left there when I was 12, so they didn't get much into the tobacco business. But
So you left Virginia for?
we moved to Bristol.
Well, it was big.
Yeah, big move. You know, but for me, it
Yeah, it was a big move. So
I went from the country to the city.
Yeah, so what was it like living in Bristol?
Well, Bristol was different, you know. I liked Bristol, and I had a good experience growing up there and going to high school. But to me, it never felt like home because I always wanted to go back to the mountains. And I like Bristol, and I still go back there occasionally, but it's probably not on my list of permanent retirement choices.
I want to give you a couple of notes on Pam. She, first of all, was the first woman to ever serve as the head of the Tennessee Bar Association. She is recognized as one of the top 100 lawyers in the state of Tennessee and recognized as one of the best lawyers in America. And I'm trying to figure out how this small town girl, that there's something inside of you even now that wants to go back to Virginia. How did you get from there to here?
You know, I don't know that I have a short answer to that. I think a lot of it was luck. Some of it was having teachers and people say to me, you know, you don't have to go back and live on that creek bank with no running water. You can go to college and you can do things. So I really give a lot of the credit to the teachers I had in middle school and high school.
All right, let's start in middle school. Let's name one of those teachers that kind of infused you with possibility.
Well, Mrs. Brown in 6th grade, Miss Parker in the 7th grade. She took me under her wing. She took me out and bought probably my first store-bought dress. I mean, really. I was...
You remember what it looked like?
Yeah, it was pink and it had a little jacket. Oh, I loved it. It was wonderful. And she cared enough for me that she knew that, you know, I was supposed to go to this banquet and I didn't have a nice dress. So as, you know, a young teacher, and in hindsight, looking back on it, she was really young. She took me out to the best dress store in Bristol, bought me a beautiful pink dress. So.
What did that do for you?
Well, it just, you know, it made me feel like a new person, and it just meant so much that she cared enough for me as a student that she would go and do that. And
isn't it
wonderful.
remarkable that some of the best, most transformational teachers are transformational not because of the school work they teach you, but the life work they teach you?
Absolutely. And she was a classic example of that.
All right, so you had an advocate.
I did.
When you were in middle school. Who was that person in high school?
Well, I had several in high school. Actually, that same teacher moved to the high school when I did. She went from the junior high to the high school, so she was there throughout my high school years. I had another high school teacher who actually encouraged me to run for state Beta Club president. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but, you know, she encouraged me to run for that. And then, of course, there's Mr. Smith, who was the somewhat curmudgeonly history teacher, but he made you think, and he taught you a lot about how to question things, and I think that made a big difference in my life.
What kind of student were you?
Well, I was probably a pretty highly motivated student. I mean, I made good grades, and did all the 4-H and Beta Club.
Right,
and,
you were
know,
involved.
All the
What was
activities.
driving your motivation, though?
I don't know that I knew at the time. I mean, I knew I wanted to go to college, and nobody in my family had ever been to college, and my parents had no concept about the process of getting in, and it never dawned on me there was another school other than the University of Tennessee, because, I was in-state tuition there.
Right.
And I could get grants and I could get some scholarships, so I came here. But when I was in high school, I knew that I did want to go to college. At the time, I wanted to be a news reporter, but I kind of got away from that.
You chose better.
I don't know. I chose differently.
You chose
Howard.
differently. All right. So you get to the University of Tennessee to study what?
Well, as I said, I started out as a journalism major.
Right.
And I guess I started taking a lot of history classes, and there was a professor here at the time named Jonathan Utley, and Dr. Utley sort of took me under his wing, and gradually I became an American history major. And then about halfway through my senior year at UT, I realized, what am I going to do for a living? And at that point, I decided to apply to law school. But I wasn't one of those people who spent my whole life wanting to go to law school. I mean,
Right.
That was never where I thought I would end up.
As I'm looking at your life, I'm seeing people placed in your life strategically to kind of sow the seeds of possibility in you. You making good on that. I mean, people believed in you, and it's almost like you wanted to ratify their belief in you by performing. I mean,
I definitely did. I mean, I appreciated it when people would make suggestions to me, because I truly was naive and had no idea. And then I wanted to do well for them.
now, when you look back at the poverty that you were born into and your parents, how did they view all of this?
The thing I think is most amazing about my parents is that they never tried to stop me. They were willing to let me make these leaps. And to me, that's one of the most amazing things about them. They didn't have the education themselves. And a lot of times in those circumstances, people are afraid to send their children out, to send
Right.
them out the door. But they weren't. And they encouraged me. They didn't have any money to give me, but they certainly supported me in every other possible way. And my 4 younger sisters, the same with them. I mean,
Did
they
you all
never-
finish college?
We all finished college.
Isn't that amazing?
I know. First people in our family on either side, and all 5 of us went to college.
Amazing. Pam Reeves is my guest. The show is Anything is Possible. We'll be right back.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up,
I would like to tell you that we've come a long ways, but the truth is there are still women every day in this city who are being sexually harassed in the workplace. Occasionally, men being sexually harassed, but still, by and large, it's the women who are being sexually harassed.
My guest this week on Anything is Possible is Pam Reeves. She's one of the best attorneys in the state of Tennessee and in America for that matter. I met you years and years ago.
You
I
did?
told you, I thanked you for going to the prom with me, but that was a different Pam Reeves. But
It
thank you for joining us today. So we get to college. You are, did you say an American history
American history major.
and then you looked at that and go, wow, okay, put that on a resume.
Yeah, didn't think I was going to be a real good history teacher. In
So-
hindsight, I should have started the History Channel, but
Right.
I didn't get around to that.
So when did you decide on law?
I really decided in my senior year that I would apply to law school. So
Why?
Well, I think by then I had begun to realize that with a law degree, you could do so many things. And I was a very activist student at undergraduate. I was into recycling and into women's rights and all that sort of thing. So I decided into the snail darter, I decided I would go
I
and
remember
save
that.
the world.
I remember that. Now, why did you want to save the world and why were you into women's rights? Was there something that pushed you to that?
Well, I think just being a woman in the early 70s, I came to UT in 1972, and that was such a dynamic time for women's rights. The ERA was still being considered, and there were just so many things that were happening in terms of what was going on in women and reproductive rights and things like that. And it didn't seem fair to me that we should have to fight that fight. So now it's really bothering me that all these years later, we're having to fight some of those fights again.
So you get into law school. Did you enjoy it?
You know, I think to the extent that anybody can enjoy law school, I did. We had a great class. We had a great group of people. We were the first class that had a significant number of women. We were about 20% of our class were women. So we had a pretty strong network. We had a great women's intramural team. We played football, basketball, softball. So, you know, we had a lot of things that kept us from going crazy in law school.
After law school, what?
After law school, I started practicing, and very shortly after I started practicing, a woman called me up and said, I want to come and talk to you about a sexual harassment case. And of course, I've just graduated from law school. I've just taken the bar exam. I've just had employment law. I'm going, what is sexual harassment?
What is that?
But rather than admit I didn't know, I started going to look at the books and discovered that it was sort of an up-and-coming area of law. And so I got involved in an early sexual harassment case here in Knoxville, and sort of from that point on, developed an area of expertise in sexual discrimination and sexual harassment.
What did that teach you?
Well, it taught me that to really do well, you have to find an area that you enjoy and that other people understand that you're good at. And so that was a niche that nobody else in Knoxville at that time had, and I started really learning about it and talking about it, speaking about it. I remember coming to your radio show years ago and talking about it. And so I sort of decided my plan was to become the sex expert, and that's sort of the area that I focused on.
So now that you've spent that time in that career, and I know we're going to get to talking about mediation, which is something you're very passionate about as well. How has America changed with regards to sexual harassment, sexual discrimination? Where are we now?
I would like to tell you that we've come a long ways, but the truth is there are still women every day in this city who are being sexually harassed in the workplace. Occasionally, men being sexually harassed, but still, by and large, it's the women who are being sexually harassed. Because part of it is hormones. I don't know. You know, people just sometimes forget in the heat of the moment that what they are doing and saying is inappropriate. And some of it, a lot of time, it's still the power thing. You know, the boss has the power, and if I don't do what the boss says, then I'm going to end up unemployed.
By definition, what is sexual harassment?
Sexual harassment is a situation where someone in the workplace is having to experience unwanted, unwelcome sexual attention, and it's particularly important that, you know, or relevant if the person is someone who is above them in the chain of command. You know, if it's a coworker, then that's one level of sexual harassment. But if it's a supervisor harassing someone else, then it brings a different atmosphere to the situation.
My understanding is that in order to be a great attorney, attorneys are advocates. So you certainly need a mastery and understanding of the law and your field within the law. But you probably need passion for the people that you represent.
I don't think there's any question about that.
Okay. So how did you come to take on the drive of an advocate? Because I know people who know law, but then I know people who are great with the law because of the way they care about people. Like the law is what they use to help people, but what really makes them great is the fact that they care about people. How did you get to that?
You know, I think that that's just part of who I am. I mean, I've always had passion for whatever I do, whether it was in elementary school or middle school in 4-H or, you know, whatever projects I get involved in, I have to enjoy doing them. And if I don't, I can't do them.
Right.
You know, it's like, don't ever ask me to fundraise for an organization because I'm terrible at that. But ask me to clean the toilets, I'm good. You know, if I'm happy doing it, I will do it well. If I'm not happy, then I won't do it.
My guest is Pam Reeves. This is Anything is Possible. More in just a moment.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up,
I've never really practiced law to make a huge amount of money. My goal has been to try to help people. And I also know that there are so many people in the world who don't have a voice to speak for themselves. And that, to me, makes practicing law worthwhile.
Pam Reeves is my guest on this edition of Anything is Possible. So let me ask you this. Most people that are people of possibility, when we look at where you began and where you are in your life now, it's a big leap.
Big leap.
I mean, you grew up in some pretty serious poverty. We kind of moved past it pretty quickly. But you mentioned somewhere in there being on the banks of the river with no creek. With it wasn't even the upgrade. It was
That's right.
It was the creek with no electricity. And to, be one of the top attorneys in our state, to be president of the Tennessee Bar Association at some point, to be one of the best lawyers in America, especially in your field, that's a long way.
It is.
I never buy it, though, when I get the shorthand on somebody's story that it just happened. I always believe that there are people, there's purpose, and there's pain.
And there's hard work.
And hard work. So what's the toughest thing you had to push past? And the reason I ask that question on this show so much is because a lot of success, and I don't define success by money. Success is you've been given a vision of what you ought to be and where you ought to go, and to vigorously and passionately pursue that. To get where you're supposed to be. That's success. For one person, it's this. For another person, it's that. But I always want people to know that it's okay to have to deal with some difficulty in your life because it has a refining effect on you. It typically makes you better if it doesn't break you. And I want people to know that that's part of the journey. So what's yours?
Well, I think for me, probably the hardest part was just ever getting myself to the point where I could believe that I could make that leap.
You?
Yeah, because, when you don't grow up with a lot, you have sort of a tendency to think, okay, this is what it's supposed to be. And, for me, it was taking those first steps to be willing to come to out of high school, to go away to college, to come to Knoxville, and then to get the nerve up to apply to law school. I looked around law school the first day of law school, and, there were people there whose parents had been lawyers, and there were people there, who had come from cities far away, and I felt very intimidated because I thought, I'm basically just a little country girl, and I don't know a lot about life. And so to me, it was just getting to the point where I was comfortable with being willing to fail, to stick my neck out and do something.
How'd you get comfortable?
Just by trying.
Just jumping. Just
the
taking the leap.
The first semester of law school, or quarter at that time of law school, I sat there and hardly ever said a word because all these people seemed really smart and they seemed to know so much more than I did. And then we had exams, and I'll be darned, I came out okay. So at that point I thought, maybe I can do this law school thing. And
So you said just finding the faith to believe that something was possible was a big hurdle for you, right? When you started to practice law, though, why did you keep practicing? Because I can see you, okay, I made it through law school, I do this. Why'd you stay?
Well, I stayed because I'm never bored, and I always feel like I can make a difference in someone's life. People come to me, they don't go see a lawyer when things are good.
Right.
They come see a lawyer when there's a problem in their life. So I've learned over time that I'm pretty good at solving people's problems.
Are you?
Yeah. I think that's one of my strengths, that I can think outside the box and look at a lot of different things and go, okay, that won't work, but maybe we'll go this way. And just by always being willing to say, okay, there is a way that we can solve this problem, and continue to work around that.
I like that. There is a way.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So let me ask you about poverty. Do you believe that having grown up poor, it gives you a different sensitivity and sensibility about helping people because you know what it's like not to have? Does
I
it
don't
give
think
you-
I'd ever thought about it that way, but I think that's probably true. You know, for me, it doesn't take a lot to make me happy in terms of material things. I don't
Yeah.
have to live in a big house.
Right.
The fact that I have running water, you know, and I don't have to brush my teeth on the front porch, to me, I'm fine. So I've never really practiced law to make a huge amount of money. My goal has been to try to help people. And I also know that there are so many people in the world who don't have a voice to speak for themselves. And so if they know that there are people out there, and there are so many good lawyers in this town who do so much good work for so many people, and sometimes it's hard for someone to find the right person on the right day, but there are people out there who do that. And that, to me, makes practicing law worthwhile.
Do you still see yourself as a low country girl?
I do. You know, I'm going back to the mountains tomorrow. I mean, I like to get up there as often as I can. It's a sad place in some ways now because all my cousins, you know, they're mostly unemployed and they don't have a lot of good things happening in their lives right now. But, you know, it's home, it's where my folks are, it's where I love to be. And
So would you give me a 60-second possibility seminar? And this is for the little country girl that's watching right now, and she needs to figure out her way out.
well, the first thing she needs to do is to say, I can do this. There is a way, I can do this. And then she needs to find the teachers who will say to her, yeah, we can do this. I will help you. I will show you the way to go. And she also needs to understand that there are so many opportunities for kids from those kinds of backgrounds to get funding to go to college that nobody, you know, if somebody hadn't said to me, hey, Pam, you know, you can apply for a grant, you can apply for a scholarship, I would have not known that. So we need people to pass that information along, and we need kids and their parents to say, you know, I don't have to say you can't go to college because I can't afford it. My dad literally sent me to UT with a $20 bill. And everything else I either earned or I got a grant or I applied for a scholarship. So, you know, there are lots of opportunities if people will just know that they can look for them.
Wow. It's been a delight to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And my takeaway from our conversation, you said, well, the first thing you need to do is say, I can do this.
Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you.
Pam Reeves, thanks for being on the show. We'll see you next time.